It's Hip Hop and R&B on 103.5 The Beat with Papa Keith, special guest and brethren. I would really like to consider him that because I've watched this man's career go, man, skyrocket, and, you know, he's still humble to this day, man. I've been a fan of him and his music for a very long time. Ladies and gentlemen, Pressure, BUSS, Pipes in the building.
Big up, big up.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man. I'm so glad that you're here, man. I'm so proud of you. I want to start from the humbling beginnings. Please let everybody know where you're from.
Pressure BUSS Pipe, born and raised in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
I mean, I know a lot of people think you're Jamaican until maybe they
Naturally.
hear your accent.
Naturally.
So explain to people just the vibe of reggae music and how it transcends throughout the Caribbean. Although you're from Virgin Islands, not from Jamaica, but how reggae music has touched you and how it touches the island.
Well, definitely from a young age, reggae music is like the heart of the ghetto, And I was born and raised in the projects ghetto in the Virgin Islands, so
Rock City, right?
Yeah, Rock City. So I grew up listening to hardcore reggae roots rockers music. Of course, the Dennis Brown, the Bob Marley, yeah, you name it, the Gregory Isaacs, the Barry Salmon, and of course, the dancehall artists, the Bounty Killer, them, the Capleton, Sizzler. The whole fraternity was like, I'm a big fan of the music first.
That's what's up. And so that created a subculture for the same thing in other islands,
Definitely,
right? So although you're not Jamaican, you still have that subculture of...
It's like a seed that planted, what I mean?
Yeah.
A seed that the Jamaican culture planted throughout the world, and it has blossomed in the Caribbean for sure.
Absolutely, and I love that, and thanks for addressing that. Let's go into like when you first started, like who discovered you? What was the first time somebody heard you and said, "Nah, man, studio, let's go"?
Well, friends. I always used to, like in high school, I would probably mock Bounty Killer a lot. That was my favorite artist, so I would always try to keep that deep voice, and I would do like couple talent shows and stuff from even in the 9th grade, 10th grade, and that draw the recognition from my peers in school. They would always be like, "Yo, bro, one day you need to do your own music. You sound good, sounding like somebody else. You know what I mean? You should do your own thing, And it wasn't until I really started to mess up in school, I was, following the wrong company, as I would say.
Gotcha.
And my mom sent me away to live with my uncle. And he took me out of all my musical activities.
Wow.
I used to play the drums and the trumpet. Like, I would never think I would be an artist. Like drumming would be my future. That's what I really wanted to be. Like, I would see myself in front of, like, visions of myself in front of a crowd of thousands of people. But I was a drummer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it wasn't until, like, I had to, like, I couldn't play the drums anymore. I couldn't play the trumpet. I had to focus on my academics. So I started to write, I started to sing, and that was something that nobody could have taken from me.
From you, wow.
So by the time I got my grades up, I didn't want to play the drums anymore. I didn't want to play the trumpet anymore. You understand? I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to sing. I wanted to utilize that part of that instrument, And so I started to do that. I was in Valdosta, Georgia. So I was going to a high school where, I was the only Caribbean student. And of course, being that I was so into the Jamaican culture, when I got to like lunchtime in school, they would have little rap battles in school and stuff. And one time I just went in a little rap battle and bust a Sean Paul song. I'm a bust out a Sean Paul, and everybody will say, "Yo," because they don't know nothing about Sean Paul at that time.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is like in 1997, 98. Of course, only the Caribbean people fully know who Sean Paul is, but that American crowd, that dirty South American crowd, they didn't know none of my artists that I like at all. So that was like, they thought that was my song.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when I sing the Sean Paul, they was like, "Yo, you need to come studio. We need to do songs together."
Wow.
I'm like, "Yo, I need to start writing my own stuff. I can't go forward." You know what I mean?
Right.
I do nothing with nobody's song. So right then and there, I decided, start writing music. But at the same time, I was seeking myself, my faith, as Rastafari. So I was listening to a lot of Sizzler, Capleton, Rasta music that were elevating to me at the time coming up. And I first songs I started to write was actually culture music.
Yeah.
Real conscious music. So
I remember that.
Yeah, so I sent, I decided to work with one of the brethren who had a little studio in his house. I did one song, and that song he put it on a CD. I remember sending the CD back to the Virgin Islands. One of my friends, he heard it and he was like, "Bro, you need to come back home."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's some other artists in the place that doing their thing. You should come back home, link with them, and start something. So I would beg my mom to like, "Yo, mom, I'm doing good in school now. Like, please send me back home. Like, I'm ready." You know what I mean? And she would be like, "All right, cool." So finally, at the last year, I was able, the last half of the year, which in 12th grade, she brought me back home to graduate in Charlotte Amali High School, which I really wanted to do that too. So, you know, so coming back home, I linked up with a couple other artists. We used, at that time, we used to say chanters. You know what I mean? We wasn't artists yet, but we used to chant, you know, and that's what we used to call it. So I link up with other brethren, and, you know, we would now opening up for shows in the Virgin Islands. Our first show we opened up was for Sizzla.
Wow,
you know, to
big.
be exact. And that did it for us. Everybody in the crowd loved our performances. We were actually the #1 opening acts for any act that would come to the Virgin Island. It didn't even have to be reggae music.
Right.
Like if you're a big international act, you come into the VI, they were always looking for that group, Star Lion Family, they called us. Right? But in the group, you know, everybody had their favorites, and I was one of the favorites in the group. Everywhere we go, people would be like, "Yo, the group bad enough, but are you the pressure? Bad. So I was working with the group, and we went to St. Croix to do this local show, because at that time in the Virgin Islands we had so much artists doing their thing. I'm talking about artists that the world doesn't know, but for me they're still big in my eyes because I come up watching them doing their thing. And in the Virgin Islands, some of them were the first to even be played on the radio stations in the Virgin Islands. So to me, it was a big thing just to be heard on the radio. So producer Dean Pond, he was living here in Miami, and he was working at the Guitar Center, and he was actually at the concert in St. Croix, and he's like, "Yo, bro, I love the group, but I want to work with you. I want to get some work done with you." I know me fire him. I say, "Yo, you know, says that group me I work with. So you can't just work with me. You have to work with everybody." And Dean said, "No, I'm not do that, you know. But when you're ready, me and you are going to work." And through the passage of time, I was like, you know what? I really want to do some solo work. You know, this group thing is nice, but I don't get to really shine. I don't really get to do what I want to do to the full capacity. So it come a time I just hold a little meeting with the man, and I say, "Yo, you know what? I want to do some solo work." But I was thinking like they would be like, everybody wanted to do solo work.
Wow, you were just brave enough to bring it up.
I was the bravest one to bring it up. So when I brought it up, everybody was like, "Yeah, man, I have some things we want to do." And so I was like, yes. So I called up Dean. I said, "Dean, ready? I want to get some work done," because he was doing work with other artists, and the production was better than all the production I was getting.
Wow.
So it was like, yo, I really need to work with Dean. Because him have the production. He already studied the Jamaican culture, the formula of reggae music. We just pick up something and we just play it sound chaka chaka and like some real tin pan song.
Right.
But Dean had found the formula where bass was heavy, drums heavy. So it's like, that's what I wanted. So I say, you know what? I'm going to work with Dean. I recorded my first album with Dean in the year 2004, released in 2005. The Pressure Is On. And he was good friends with Dan Carleone. Right? Dan Carleone used to come to Guitar Center, buy his equipment, whatever. And he gave Dan a copy of the CD. That week, Dan said that was the only thing he listened to the whole week. So after that week, he reached out to me. And
that's Don calling him right now.
Don Corleone.
Don calling him right now on his phone.
No, that's not him. That's mommy. Wrong time. Right. But so like Dan now, he reached out to me, and of course, I'm a big fan of Dan. Dan is producing the Drop Leaf rhythm, the Seasons rhythm. He's an artist thing in reggae and dancehall. And I'm thinking, all right, if I'm going to work with a producer in Jamaica, it's probably not going to be him right now. I'm probably have to build myself up to work with a Dan Carleone. So when he reached out to me, it was like a dream come true, bro. Like I could remember on the phone, I was like, "Yo, which Dan? Like Dan, like Dan Carleone? I mean the Drop Leaf Dan? Like him say, yeah, man, I'm me. You understand? So he said, "Bro, I want to work with you. I have some rhythms. I want to send you some rhythms. See what you can do with them." And the same day he sent the rhythms, I was in Miami. He sent them to Dean. At the time, I didn't have no computer for things, so he sent it to Dean. Dean downloaded the rhythms at Guitar Center, and I met Dean at the Guitar Center. I went over there, and Dean played the rhythm them for me. And we went through the rhythms, and the first rhythm that caught my attention was the Love and Affection rhythm.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was at least 13 rhythms. I heard that track like it was the second track on the CD. And I was like, all right, that bad. Let me go through, see what else I go on.
Yeah.
And I say, you know what? Go back to the second track. Me need to start on that one. That give me a vibe. That same night I wrote the song right here in Miami. And that same night we called Dan. And he heard it over the phone, and he was like, yo, you need to come to Jamaica, like, now. I need you to come. Yeah, no. Like, yeah, no. So I'm like, I'm ready. I don't have nothing to do. Like, literally, like, this is what I've been waiting for. You know what I mean? So within 2 weeks, I was in Jamaica. I re-recorded the song, Love and Affection. And within that same week, I think he gave it to DJ Wayne just for give the radio a piece of it and see what go on. And it was history after that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I went from like, and then, you know, nobody knows who's Pressure Bus Pipe at the time. You know, I could remember listening to the radio station and hearing the song, and people would call in and say, yo, pull up that Jamaican, that bad. Yo, pull up that Sizzler, that bad. And I'm like, all right, cool. If they like it, I'm good. They're going to find out who I am.
Right.
But if they like it like that, if they're comparing me to a Jamaican, this is my inspiration. You know?
Wow.
They compare me to a Sizzler. I'm just quiet like this. All right, cool. They're gonna find out soon.
Yeah.
But if they're comparing me to these artists that I look up to, I've already won. I'm feeling like I'm already in the boxing ring to box. You know what I mean? So it was that for me. And like I said, history. You know, from that it was just uphill.
And the song lives forever. Love and Affection, man.
Definitely.
Listen, great story. Like I could listen to even
Yeah,
more
man.
and more and more. And I just want to let you know, I interviewed Don some months ago, and he had nothing but great things to say
Of
about
course,
you,
man. Much love to
working
Dan.
with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
man.
I'm glad to see that.